So once again, welcome. It's great to have all of you here tonight. We're going to be focusing on the basics of planned giving. I will be covering ECF in general, and then the context of planned giving, and then types of planned giving, and how to implement planned giving in your congregation. And of course, if anyone is online who is not from a parish community, please do just re-understand in your mind, if I'm using parish and congregation constantly, please do reinterpret that for your own circumstances, because the basics of planned giving serve every type of institution. The Episcopal Church Foundation works with a number of different types of Episcopal institutions, and all of the same principles apply to you as well. So just to get started, something I often say when I do a planned giving workshop is just to remind everyone what I'm not here to do tonight. What I'm not here to do tonight is to turn all of you into planned giving experts. Aren't you happy about that? You don't need to be the expert in planned giving. But what I want to help you become as leaders, both lay and clergy of your congregation, is to become better awareness raisers about planned giving within your own particular context. At first, though, a little bit about the Episcopal Church Foundation, for those of you who may not know ECF. We are an independent and lay-led foundation. We focus on enhancing the leadership and financial capabilities of Episcopal congregations, dioceses, and other Episcopal institutions all across our church. We focus on this in two main areas. First, in leadership resource development. Many of you out there are quite familiar with the wonderful ecfvp.org, our vital practices website, which is available to everyone free of charge. And you are able to, in addition to being posted on a variety of stories and wonderful best practices, you can also access all of our webinars through that website. You're also probably familiar with some of our publications, such as Funding Future Ministry, our Planned Giving Guide I'll mention later, as well as our Vestry Resource Guide and other events that we have throughout the year to empower your leadership to do the work that God's called you to do in your own unique and particular circumstance. For financial resources, I'm actually overseeing our financial resource group. We have a wonderful team of professionals who work in a variety of areas, including capital campaigns, where we can work with your congregation or Episcopal entity on a sliding fee scale. So depending on what your operating income is, that will set your rate for your capital campaign. We are also able to help you in the area of annual giving and stewardship, and we are the official resource for planned giving, and that's part of the reason why we are doing our workshop here tonight. We also have a wonderful endowment management area, and I will talk more about that as we proceed on this evening. So we are very happy that you're able to join us and participate in this webinar, as all of our webinars are always recorded and available to your use. So just to set context, when I talk about planned giving, I think it's vital that we set it within the context of your overall stewardship ministry that you're doing at your congregation or throughout your Episcopal entity. And tonight, even though 2 hours may seem like a long time, it will go fast, and we really don't have the time to get into depth of the rich theological understanding of Christian stewardship. Of all that we have and all that we are belongs to God, and we are seeking to be responsible stewards for ourselves and our lives and our assets and income so that we can be accountable for all of these things. However, what I wanted to focus in on at the moment was financial giving, which is a part of stewardship. And if you are asking for a financial gift, no matter what the type, from people in your parish, there are some very important characteristics to keep in mind. And the first is vision and mission. You need to be able to explain to people what you are raising money for. And more today, when you're doing that, you need to be able to explain how what you're raising money for fits into your overall strategic vision for your congregation or Episcopal entity. Secondly, you need to have in place appropriate policy and structure. That's a variety of different things, such as endowment and gift acceptance policies that we'll mention later. It also has to do, though, with budgets and clearly understood budgets, being visual and story-oriented and talking about impact, so that you can demonstrate to the members of your congregation that the gifts that they will give will, number one, be used for the purposes they would have intended, and number two, that you are using them appropriately and keeping them safe, investing them if they were meant to be invested, holding them in reserve if necessary, or using them for operations if that was the intention. But you're seeking to build a sense of trust and confidence among the members of your congregation so that whether or not the leadership of the church changes, you can still demonstrate that the leadership will be good stewards of the gifts with which they have been entrusted. Finally, educate and enlighten. This is what most of the time we're talking about when we talk about stewardship. This is where you are inviting people to become more generous in their giving, to become fully engaged in the life and ministry of your congregations, and therefore respond to the vision that you've set out, respond to what you have outlined in policy and structure, showing that funds will be used for the purposes intended and that they will be held safely. It is all of these factors taken together that inspires people in the modern world to be supportive of the Christian church. You cannot depend anymore that there is this noblesse oblige, that people will automatically support your church. You must be able to prove it and demonstrate that you are having an impact both in the lives of the people of your parish as well as in the wider community. People need that today. There are different types of gifts, as I've already mentioned, and I've laid them out for you here. The first type is known as ordinary giving. And this is most often seen within the context of your annual pledge drive in the fall. This is a part of your ongoing annual stewardship efforts where you're actually asking for a gift, and people are giving you a gift in support of your ongoing daily ministry, your ongoing annual budget. People give this type of gift out of their current income. And because it comes out of their current income, it will ebb and flow. It will go up and down based upon the impact of the economy. The second type of giving is extraordinary giving, most often seen within the context of a capital campaign or major gift effort. This is a very specific type of fundraising where you are typically asking for one large pledge and then allowing people to pay off that pledge over the course of several years. As I say, it's most often seen within the context of a capital campaign where you are building something, whether that is building new facilities or refurbishing existing facilities, but it also can be for building endowments. This is not a capital campaign workshop. You have some wonderful ones coming up and other wonderful ones have been recorded. But I always like to note to people two things. One, please do remember that if you're considering doing a capital campaign, please do seek outside objective resources. Whether or not you use the Episcopal Church Foundation is not as important as seeking out an outside expert who can come into your parish or Episcopal entity and give you objective feedback. No doctor operates on herself, and many of these people who will come in as professionals for a capital campaign will have done more capital campaigns in 1 year than anyone at that parish will have done in a lifetime. And it's also easier to fire someone who is not performing as you would expect. It's very difficult if you try to do that completely in-house. So that's one quick item. The other quick one is a standard thing with capital campaigns is you need enough large dollar gifts to have a successful capital campaign. However, and this is the point I want to make, even though you need a significant number of those large dollar gifts, regardless of how much an individual gives toward a capital campaign or a major gift effort, that gift is a major gift to them, and you need to keep them in the loop and communicate effectively with everyone who participates, because they need to be treated as if they are giving a major gift, because they are. So I'll get off my soapbox for capital campaigns. Planned giving or ultimate giving or legacy giving, that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And what I'd like to draw your attention to, please, is the word future. Planned gifts are future-focused gifts. That is the first main principle that I want to share with you tonight. And I want to just forewarn any of you out there, and I'm certainly not going to ask people to raise hands and self-identify, but if your parish has the very, very bad habit of consuming a windfall planned gift into the regular operating income, most of the time just to keep your doors open and keep your programs afloat, you are walking down a very, very dangerous path, because the path you're walking down is one where people who are considering making a planned gift to you may well choose someone else to give it to, someone whom they can trust, where someone else may use this for the future mission and ministry of the congregation or that charity. So I just remind you of that. These are future-focused gifts given by people that want to participate in a future that they will not be a part of, because this type of giving is given out of one's estate or out of assets that they're holding for retirement. I'll say more about planned giving in a moment, but if you can imagine with me an upside-down triangle where the base of the triangle is at ordinary giving and the tip of the triangle is down at planned giving, what that represents is the number of gifts. You typically receive the largest number of gifts from annual giving, a smaller number from capital or major gifts, and you typically receive the smallest number of gifts from ultimate gifts or planned gifts. And I'm here to tell you tonight that's okay. It is perfectly okay, because the people that are making these planned gifts are your most committed members. They are the people that want to participate in your future, a future to which they will not be physically there. They may be watching down on you from the communion of saints, but they will not be physically there. And it is just crucial that you understand that aspect and that you take that to heart and do not get overly frustrated when you do your first planned giving events, whether that be a gathering of people to talk about planned giving or something else. It is okay. This is your ultimate long-term ministry, and it takes time for people to make decisions about gifts and to ultimately commit to making them. However, though this is the smallest number of gifts, these are the largest gifts, quite often, that someone will make in their lifetime, and they can be literally life-changing to your congregation. I just heard from someone today who received a surprise bequest of $1 million. And again, I'll be talking to them about how to deal with that surprise gift. What, of course, you want to be doing is cultivating relationships so that people will trust the leadership of the parish enough to tell you about these future focused gifts that you'll be receiving. It's one of my favorite pictures, that's why it's here, but this is a basic definition of planned giving, and you can read this for yourself. But the two words that I want to point out, which are the most important, are the words personal values. And I am now going to say, hopefully very clearly, the single most important thing that I will say this evening. And if you remember nothing else from tonight, please remember this. When an individual leaves a planned gift to your congregation or to your Episcopal entity, they raise you to the level of family in their estate plan, to the same level that their children and grandchildren are. This is a hugely important gift to them emotionally. They are very invested in your future well-being, in your future mission and ministry, and so committed that they will put you at this incredibly important place in their estate plans. And what's crucial for you as leaders of your congregation to do then is that you must respond appropriately and thank people and demonstrate to those who notify you that they have raised the level of family, that you understand how important that is to them and respond in ways that are culturally appropriate to thank them and hold up their witness, because they need to know that you know how important this gift is. We'll come back to many of these principles all throughout this webinar this evening. Okay, and so the other factors that are really important for you to understand when it comes to plan giving from a basics perspective. Please understand you also, in all of your work in plan giving, and it does take some time with plan giving, in all of what you will be doing, please remember to be sensitive and gentle, and I often add patient as another factor. As I mentioned before, plan giving is your ultimate long-term ministry. Many of these gifts require that individuals seek out legal, tax, and financial advice. And we always recommend at ECF that people do seek that appropriate advice and talk to their families and let people know they're making these types of gifts. That allows for people to know, but it also takes some time. People need to have the time and space to do that. So patience is crucial. Sensitivity and being gentle. Being gentle is something we all should be doing more of in our modern lives. But when it comes to planned giving, we are talking about ultimate issues. We are talking about people's mortality. And for that reason, it is important that we are never pushy or appear as if we're promoting a particular type of planned gift. Because what we are seeking to do is to have a natural extension of our stewardship ministry in that we are raising awareness of all the different types of planned gifts so that individuals can make the decision for themselves. And as you can imagine, this is hard for a lot of people to do. They have to recognize their own mortality, that of those they love, and they need to make plans for it. So it is a challenge. So those are some of the basics. The last really important starting point I want to make is please never appear as if you are giving legal, tax, or financial advice. That is not what we are seeking to do. We are, as I say, are seeking to do this as a natural extension of our stewardship ministry, and we are always encouraging people to seek their own legal, tax, and financial advice. Okay? And more about that in just a moment. Oops, now my screen isn't changing. Okay, now it is. Excellent. Okay, so I am a bit of a jokester. Those of you who've seen me in person may well know this, and I can't translate that as effectively on the webinar without being able to see people's faces. But nonetheless, when I am out on the road, I often joke around a bit when I get to this section of the workshop, and I note to everyone that there is a very, very clear direction to clergy, and so for all of you clergy out there, this is directed directly to you, that there is a section of our prayer book which offers a very specific direction that clergy must give. This is not a wishy-washy instruction that you may do this and you may do that. They must do this. And I will often joke and try and find out who knows in what section of the prayer book this is. And I have to caution people to not yell out, it's in the burial office. If it were in the burial office, I fear that may be a little late for people to be talking about planned giving. Many people will say baptism, but the service that this comes out of is the birth or adoption, the celebration for the birth or adoption of a child. And I point this out for a number of reasons. Number one is that most of us as Episcopalians will joke about ourselves, but we won't pat ourselves on the back enough. when we are doing the right thing. And we certainly are doing the right thing by putting this in such a transformational time of people's lives when they are becoming a parent. I'm not a parent. I'm the uncle of 14, so I have a basic idea of how transformational parenthood is. And I just note this as well because people at the parish, both lay and clergy, can pull out this direction at any time. It doesn't have to be within that setting of the celebration of the birth or adoption of a child. But let me just note a few things. One, this type of direction has been in our prayer book since the very first prayer book, and I verified that with my church history professor at General Seminary. In addition, most people, when they think about making a planned gift, they think of the most elderly members of their congregation, people in their 90s quite often. And what I want to commend us all for is by having this in a section of the prayer book that actually is typically addressing a much younger audience, where people, even though people are having children later and later in life nowadays, this is directed towards people earlier in life, at a time when they should be considering what is most important to them. How do they want their children cared for? And they should be considering all of these issues at that time. So pat ourselves on the back for that. I also will joke, if anyone knows, where this shows up in the wonderful 1928 prayer book, and I love the 1928 prayer book, don't get me wrong, but it's in a rather awkward section. It's in the ministration of the sick. So I'll let that sink in for a moment, but I'm sure you can imagine Mother Jennifer going to Mrs. Jones and saying, Mrs. Jones, you don't look so well today. Have you considered making a planned gift to the congregation? Perhaps not as opportune, but I do want to note all of those times. So use this section of the prayer book like so many parts of the prayer book. You can use it to your greater end. You can include it in materials you would put together because this has been a very useful tool for centuries, quite literally. Okay. So this is your quick summary of the different types of, I beg your pardon, of what's special about planned giving, that it is a future focus. It is all about the donor's passion. This is a very emotional gift. Remember that this raises your parish or the Episcopal institution to the level of family in someone's estate plan. So it is keenly important to them as an individual and to their ultimate goals of what they're trying to accomplish. Remember to always be sensitive to individual needs, since we are dealing with end-of-life issues and the need for consulting legal and tax professionals. And please, I've been intimating at this, remember that you need to be building trust and sustaining awareness over the long term. People are making these gifts after they pass away, and since it takes a long time for them to make it, quite often you need to be making people aware of them and reminding of them of this over the long term. But building trust is the key factor. You need to have that level of trust so that individuals will make this gift and hopefully make more unrestricted gifts so that you won't have anachronistic restrictions on them. Now, one of the most important ways that we at the Episcopal Church Foundation have found helps build trust over the long term and helps encourage more people to give a planned gift is having in place endowment and gift acceptance policies. And I'll note those briefly a bit later, but anyone who's attending our workshop tonight can certainly, let me just check that we are still on audio mode. Yes, everything's good. Okay. That everyone who's attending tonight, if you're interested in getting a set of those endowment and gift acceptance policies, please just contact me at the Episcopal Church Foundation. I will put you in touch with our staff who can help you with those documents. We'll send them to you in electronic form. Okay. Having a little reactivity with my keyboard. But I've asked if anyone has questions that they are certainly welcome to type them in the chat message. And unfortunately, no one has typed them in now. I'm sorry for whatever technical glitch happened before that took away my handsome face from your viewing. But if anyone does have questions, you're welcome to type them in now or later. There will be other times to stop. So for now, I'm going to continue on into the planned giving types. But just let me note that all of you, when you registered, and those of you who are listening to this recording, will have access not only to our slides, but also to this document, which goes through many, many different planned gifts, including life income gifts. And on the next page, it also goes through a variety of different planned giving vehicles that you may choose to use. I just note that so that it has been sent to all of the registrants. However, I note that at this point because I know when I'm in person, many people find this section of the webinar a little difficult to listen to, and you're certainly welcome in the recording to play back this or play other webinars that recap the different types of planned gifts. And you can certainly use that cheat sheet, as I call it, to either follow along or to use in the future. But of course, if you found that this will be utterly sleep-inducing to you, that is perfectly fine. You may take a little nap as long as you wake up later. You may then just need to promise me that if you do fall asleep, that you will keep this by your bedside at night, next to your daily office book or whatever you use to relax and fall into the sleep of Christ, having confidence in your own personal salvation. And you can then recite using my Michigan/New Jersey accent all of these different types of planned gifts, because subliminally you'll be educated about all the different types of planned gifts. So that's a joke for those of you who don't know me personally. Anyway, so many different types of planned gifts. I'm just going to touch on a few aspects of them, and so that you get a taste for the different types. But the main principle that I'm trying to communicate to you now is that there are many different types of planned gifts. And I'm recommending that you raise awareness of all of the different types of planned gifts to everyone in your congregation, regardless of age or circumstance, because you never know what someone's particular situation is or what type of gift they may actually be interested in. And so raising awareness of all the different types is, of course, quite helpful, because that allows people to have the time and the knowledge to reflect on what is right for them. And as I say, things change over time, and people may be interested in different types of gifts over time. So I'll be talking in a moment about bequests, and then getting into a little more depth with life income gifts. And I wanted to just focus in now on a few different types of other gifts, all of which you should be raising awareness of and be aware of, so that you can share them with others. And you can, of course, always share that cheat sheet that I provided with any members of your congregation or constituents in your Episcopal entity. So the first type of gift is a tax-deferred account. So most people my age and younger, I'm 47, have the vast majority of their assets in these so-called tax-deferred accounts, and they work wonderfully for most people. You are putting funds away while you are working before they are taxed, and they accumulate and, God willing, hopefully grow over time. And then when you are retired and you're able to start taking distributions, it's then that you pay the taxes, and you pay the ordinary income tax for that which you take out of these tax-deferred accounts. And these are, of course, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, for those of us in the non-for-profit world. Now, something that a lot of people don't give much thought to is who would receive the remaining balance of any of these accounts after you and your spouse would have passed away. Many people will leave very substantial balances in the account. And if you wish to, if you believe in the future mission and ministry of your parish or other Episcopal entity, you could put your parish or another Episcopal entity as the full or partial or contingent beneficiary of your IRA or other tax-deferred account. And the charity you put down will receive that gift completely tax-free. So it can be a tremendous gift to the institution. Life insurance. Now, life insurance can also be a wonderful gift for people to give to a parish or Episcopal entity. And like all of these gifts, I mean, you should consult an appropriate professional. With life insurance, certainly seek the assistance of your life insurance agent or broker that you work with. There are many different options when it comes to life insurance. One option, of course, is if you have a life insurance policy that has cash value that you no longer need, you can actually make the parish the owner and beneficiary of that policy and receive a substantial tax deduction for that gift. They will receive it, obviously, when you would pass away. You can also, if you're paying on a current policy on your life, which you may also no longer need for whatever reason, your children have grown or whatever the case might be, but you're still paying on it, you can actually, once again, make the parish the owner and beneficiary of that policy, and you can make the payments for the policy directly to the parish once they are owner and beneficiary as a donation. And that enables you to take those donations as a tax deduction because that is how that process works. However, one thing that you can make certain to raise awareness to anyone, whether or not they have term insurance or any type of insurance, practically every insurance policy will allow you to make your parish or Episcopal entity a full or partial beneficiary or a contingent beneficiary of a policy so that they may receive it at your death. Now, this can be a very easy gift for people to make. It actually was the very first planned gift I ever made. I, at the time, very much believed in the future mission and ministry of my congregation at the time, and I did not have any other dependents. And so when I received term life insurance for free from my employer, I put my parish and another Episcopal entity down as the ultimate beneficiary. And if your parish is blessed to have a sufficient number of young people who don't have other commitments, this is a great way to allow them to begin getting into the process and into the practice of making a planned gift by putting your parish down in this way. So I just offer all of these as thoughts for you to share as is appropriate within your own context at a parish. Real estate. Okay. Now, as I often say, real estate can be, emphasis on the can, a wonderful gift. Can also be one of those gifts, as I say, that keeps on taking from the parish. And I would love if people could send me any of their tragic stories of real estate to help share with others. Real estate often is a gift that is hard for a parish because many people may give a gift of real estate that may be harder to sell on the normal secular market, and people want to get that tax deduction and may try to give it to a charity who may just accept it just because they need the money. Well, the problem is many times there are a number of encumbered properties that either are difficult to sell or are encumbered by a number of circumstances. A classic example is of a gas station. Who is going to pay for the removal of the tanks and the cleanup, the environmental cleanup, and all of the various things that have to be done to get a property ready for sale? When it comes to real estate, that is typically when you will find that your gift acceptance policies, and I'll mention those later, will be your best friend, because they will help you as leaders of your congregation be able to say no to a gift you shouldn't accept. And there are some that you shouldn't accept, and you don't have to accept any gift for that matter. But as soon as you do accept it, it is your property. And if it had restrictions on it, you need to abide by those restrictions. There is a specific planned gift that I do want to note. It's on the cheat sheet, called a retained life estate. Now, a retained life estate is a case where an individual, out of the goodness of their heart, is basically, in simple form, turning over the deed to their property to the parish, receiving a very substantial tax deduction for the future value of that property, but they retain the right to live in that property for the rest of their lives. And the problem is, quite often, it is very difficult to keep up a house for all of those years. And if you discover that you have been offered an opportunity to have a retained life estate, you should consider carefully whether or not you'd want to accept the gift. You would, in all likelihood, want to create a letter of agreement using your parish's attorney or your Episcopal entity's attorney, so that it is very clear to the donor that you are trying to make it a true gift to the congregation, and that they are responsible for all of the upkeep, all of the taxes, all of what's involved in making sure that this property comes to the parish as a true gift and one which will benefit the parish. So real estate often is a challenging thing, and many, many parishes out there have some really challenging stories. But that may be for another day when we're in person, or feel free to email me any of your real estate terror stories. Charitable lead trusts. This is a very brief note. Charitable lead trusts are quite rare. There are only a few thousand in the entire United States. They are for the wealthiest individuals that may be in your congregation or be associated with your Episcopal entity. These are typically created with assets going into the trust of around $10 million or more. So they are for a very select few blessed people to use. They are very complex. If you would like additional information, if your parish or Episcopal entity is blessed enough to have people associated with it of great wealth who may be considering doing some substantial estate planning, I am happy to share with you our resources from State Street Bank in Boston, who we work with managing all of our planned giving and endowment assets. I'm happy to share their resources with you about creating a charitable lead trust, but they are quite rare. So you shouldn't waste too much time raising awareness about them. The way they work, they are a term of years taxable trust, which pays an income to one or more charities for a set number of years. So it enables someone to pay off a capital campaign pledge, to build endowments, and do a number of things of that nature. So they're on the borderline between a major gift and a planned gift, but I mention them here for that reason. So they're very complex. And again, if you have someone who has assets of $10 million that may well be undervalued currently, they could place them into a charitable lead trust, and the taxes they'll be paying is based upon the originating value in that charitable lead trust. And in the future, at the end of the trust, they may do a number of things involving other types of charitable trusts to continue to shield taxes. But during that time period of the trust, it does pay an income to a variety of charities. So they can be very useful in those circumstances, but they are quite rare. I continue having problems with my screen changing. Okay, so now bequests. Bequests are over and above the vast majority of all planned gifts. And when I talk about bequests, and I'm typically talking about wills, That also applies for living trusts that then become permanent trusts after someone passes away. Trusts are, living trusts and what they create at death are much more typical out in states like California. And so there are opportunities because so many people out in the state of California do complain. I've heard a lot of complaints about the probate system there, that many people do choose to do trust. So you actually, if you're in a state like that, you actually have new opportunities, because if people are complaining about estate planning and the need to create trust, you have an open door to raise awareness very easily about leaving a bequest in such a document, such a trust, as well as within a will. So let me also note one thing, which is crucial, and this relates back to some of the things I was saying before. What you are doing in making a will, okay, is fulfilling your desires. You are fulfilling your wishes, and this is the key factor when people are making wills and trusts. But I have to share with you a very, very sad statistic, and that is, and it's been verified over and over again, around 50%, the last percentage I read was around 51% of all Americans do not have a written will. And that includes people who should really know better, who may have children they have to provide for, that may be quite wealthy. It's a whole variety of circumstances, but many people just avoid writing that will or putting those trusts into place. And quite honestly, this is a part of your ministry of planned giving, that you are encouraging people to face up to the reality of their own mortality and encouraging them to create the appropriate will and trust document so that they can have these things in place and so that their wishes will be fulfilled. Even if they do not give you a gift, this is, as I say, a part of your planned giving ministry to help people to face up to these realities and plan so that their wishes can be fulfilled. An extra note, though, is that if someone did not put a specific bequest in their will or trust to you, you will not receive anything from that will or a trust. You need to have it in it. So that is important to encourage people to consider adding you as a beneficiary. Now, that is done through typically a bequest, and there are different types of bequests. The first type is a specific dollar amount, where you say $10,000 goes to Church of the Transfiguration in New York City, which is my parish, or somewhere else. And, of course, that has two problems with it. The first being it doesn't take into account inflation, so that $10,000 today will not be $10,000 in 40 years due to inflation's impact. In addition, those specific dollar bequests must be paid first before any other allocations are made in your estate. And that can have true detrimental impact if you do not continually reflect on your estate and the assets that are contained therein. And if you have a change of circumstances late in life where your assets may be consumed due to your end-of-life care and leave very little, you could actually have, if you have several different bequests, you could be actually offsetting what you really wanted, giving bequests of a larger dollar amount and leaving almost nothing to something else that you wanted. So just do bear that in mind. They are paid first. So perhaps something you could consider that might be more useful is a percentage. So you would allocate, obviously, towards your family and other people you need to care for first, different percentages of your estate, or you could give percentages to a charity for which you have a great passion or conviction. And as my old friend Terry Parsons, God rest her soul, used to say, and I can't do her Kentucky accent, but you could never find it in your heart to tithe while you were living, you ain't going to miss it when you're dead. So that's just a thought for you. You can also consider leaving specific assets and naming specific assets in your will to give to individuals or to specific charities. You should check with charities, though, if you are seeking to leave them a specific asset, because they may or may not be able to accept it. Secondly, as a part of that, after you name assets, you then have to say, and the remainder of my estate will go to this person or to this charity in this derivation. That will often be, and it's true in all secular charities, that is often the largest planned gift that most secular charities will receive, both intentionally and unintentionally. Intentionally, if you really wanted to leave the bulk of your estate to charity, but unintentionally, if you did not take into account all of the different values of your different assets. So you could have left some very valuable assets, that Monet you have hanging in your bathroom or whatever it might be, and may have offset the situation. Contingency is what you would think. If this happens, then, so if your spouse predeceases you, or God forbid your children were to predecease you, then the amount, the percentage, the asset, the remainder, whatever the case might be, would go to a contingent beneficiary. And that's just good planning. And I will reiterate now that the Episcopal Church Foundation is strongly urging you, when you are making your estate plans, to take advice from a professional legal and financial or financial advisor in making all of these very important documents. Spend the money. It's worth it so that your wishes are fulfilled. So when I'm in person with people, I get to have a little bit more fun with the next item about restricted or unrestricted. Any gift you give, whether it's current, planned gift, a major gift, whatever type of gift you give, can be restricted to a specific purpose, or it can be unrestricted. Now, on the whole, most entities, most charities, and certainly most parishes would prefer to receive an unrestricted gift. And that's typically because most vestries, most Episcopal organizations that exist have a good idea of what's happening logistically where they are, demographically, and can make good decisions, hopefully based upon their endowment and gift acceptance policy, how to use a planned gift. Most planned gifts will end up in an endowment. I'll get into that in a moment. But there is a natural tendency, and I want all of you to know that this evening, that many people, especially if they're going to leave a very significant planned gift, desire to restrict it in some way, shape, or form. And that is just a norm. And so it's imperative that you, as leaders of your congregation, take the actions necessary, put in place endowment and gift acceptance policies, make them public, make them clear, so that more people will give you more unrestricted gifts. And you will not be stuck with any of those anachronistic restrictions, such as that classic example of the coal endowment. And I'm not talking my family's name from several generations ago, but coal the mineral endowment, where in one state someone had made an endowment to give coal to the poor at Christmas time. And gosh, that was a great idea when it happened, but people don't heat their homes with coal anymore. And so you would have to go to court to unrestrict the gift. And that is a very labor-intensive process and involves many risks and quite a lot of litigation. So strongly urge you to encourage people as much as possible to talk to the leadership of your parish or Episcopal institution, so that if they do want to make a restricted gift, that they will allow to have some opportunity for flexibility, because you don't want an anachronistic restriction that will disable ministry in the future. Okay, life income gifts. So life income gifts are gifts somewhat unique and quite often what scare people away from doing a lot of work in planned giving. But I'm here to tell you tonight there is no need to be afraid, and there's certainly no need to ever be afraid because Christ is always with us. But in addition, when it comes to life income gifts, there's no reason to be afraid, because the Episcopal Church Foundation is the main resource for planned giving throughout the entire Episcopal Church. we took over that role from the Church Center in the mid-90s, we have all of the life income gift programs in place right now, and they're available to you at this moment. There are a couple of dioceses out there that do have their own programs, and you're certainly encouraged to use those programs as they function very well, but we serve the entire Episcopal Church, and all of these types of gifts are available for you right now. And the reason I note this is because these gifts are much more complex, and they not only require, in many cases, for a charity to be registered in multiple states, but there's tremendous restrictions on how you must invest the funds and keeping reserve funds. So these are not gifts that you want to create on your own as a parish, and I would typically not advise a diocese even to do it. However, they're available to you, and the other thing for you to know as leaders of your congregation, that if you uncover that you have individuals in the congregation interested in this type of gift, they are welcome to contact us at the Episcopal Church Foundation directly, and you'll have all our contact information later, because we can work with individuals confidentially and provide for them whatever illustrations they may desire so that they can be comfortable on understanding how these gifts are made and how they will receive income from them. Also, most of the time, the members of your congregation do not want to talk to their rector or their church warden or most anyone else at the parish regarding their retirement income. So it's advantageous just to have them be in contact with us here at the Episcopal Church Foundation, and we have staff to help. So the life income gift, the way it works is that an individual cannot give away an asset without receiving, in exchange for that asset, a flow of income. Many of you have probably been approached from other charities about this. And all of these types of gifts work in basically the same way. The donor makes an irrevocable gift. You cannot get that gift back. Then the donor will receive a substantial charitable deduction in the year they make the gift. Then, typically the donor, doesn't have to be the donor, can be whomever the donor designates, will receive income typically for the rest of her life or his life, depending on what's been designated. Then, when the individuals receiving that income pass away, or when the term of year's trust ends, then the gift's value that remain is liquidated and given over to the various Episcopal charities that were designated. So what is, again, important for you to know is that the Episcopal Church Foundation has all of these programs in place. We take care of all of the back office work, all of the administration. We work with State Street Bank in Boston to achieve these results, and so we're happy to help you with them. Now what I'm going to do, and this is probably the most complex section of our little webinar for tonight, and if you have questions, type them into chat. I'll do my best to answer them in a few moments, but let me just touch on each type. So there's three main types. The first type is known as a pooled income fund. This is not as popular as it once had been when interest rates were sky high. However, even though many charities across the country have eliminated their pooled income fund, the Episcopal Church Foundation has chosen to retain it because a few people still need it. This is how it works. When an individual makes that irrevocable planned gift, their gift is pooled with other gifts of the same kind, and those participating in the pool receive a pro rata share of the income, the yield that is produced. So it is not digging into the principal of the gift. So this type of gift is appropriate for someone who is comfortable with variable income that will go up and down depending on what it yields, and wants to leave the maximum remainder for the charity, because since you're not digging into the principal of the gift, this allows for the maximum remainder for the charity. So the next type of gift is the charitable gift annuity, or the so-called CGA. If you went to college, or for that matter, if you're reading any magazine, practically, you are being catered to create a charitable gift annuity for some charity somewhere across this country. Well, you can certainly do a charitable gift annuity to benefit your parish or other Episcopal charities. The way a charitable gift annuity works is it is the most popular of all the different types of gifts. The vast majority of life income gifts come in this format because it is such a simple and straightforward gift, and also it's guaranteed income. The way it works is that after an individual makes their irrevocable gift, they enter into a contract with a charity, in this case, a contract with the Episcopal Church Foundation. And it's the Episcopal Church Foundation that guarantees to pay a fixed amount of income to that individual or that couple that has been designated. It often is the donor, but it could be someone the donor designates, such as it could be the donor's elderly parents. The donor may wish to create an income flow for his or her elderly parents, but need a charitable deduction in the present. So that's an option, and that's also a part of why this gift is so flexible. Even the income can be deferred. So this can be a part of someone's retirement plan. Now, the nature of this gift is very different from the one I just mentioned, the pooled income fund. Its nature is that it will dig into the principle of the gift. And these gifts have existed since the late 60s, and their nature is to leave about 50%, about half of the original gift to charity when the income beneficiaries pass away. That is its nature. Now that 50% could be higher or it could be lower. It depends. Depends upon how long the individual lives, because you are paying out of the assets of the gift. It also is impacted by the market. So if you have difficult markets throughout the time that that charitable gift annuity exists, it could be lower than 50%. It is also possible that the gift would go down to zero, leaving nothing for the ultimate beneficiary, the charity. However, because this is an annuity contract with the Episcopal Church Foundation, the individuals designated to receive income during their lifetime receive that guaranteed first out of the gift, and then if the gift exhausts, then it comes from the Episcopal Church Foundation itself and our endowment. We pledge our assets against those. It is very, very rare that a charitable gift annuity would exhaust, but it is possible, but the income is guaranteed to the individual. Now, just a quick note, the pooled income fund, as you can tell, I like beagles, and unfortunately I can't have a beagle, but this beagle is jumping in the pool. And the charitable gift annuity, these gifts are more simple. They can only be funded with cash or appreciated marketable securities. They can only give income to one or two individuals, and they can only give their ultimate value when the income beneficiaries pass away to Episcopal entities, okay? The third and final type of life income gift is the charitable remainder trust, and it is a bit different from the other two. It's much more complex and much more flexible. It's for larger gifts, but because it is its own charitable entity, and it gets its own federal ID number, in fact, it is capable of receiving assets of a variety of kinds. It can receive cash or appreciated securities. It also can receive real estate, family stock, or other assets that are sometimes difficult to value. It also can give income to more than two people. And if you're working with the Episcopal Church Foundation on these, as long as 51% or the majority of the ultimate gift goes to Episcopal entities, 49% or less can go to non-Episcopal entities. So this is a very useful tool for those people who may have a variety of passions, including the Episcopal Church. A couple of things for you to note out there, and I know we had a couple of questions come in, and please do type in your questions now. I'll be answering them in just a moment. But let me just highlight a couple of things about the charitable remainder trust. For you as leaders out there, the thing that's really important for you to know is that many times, people may have the intention of creating a trust like this, and when they go to their regular attorney, there are very few attorneys who are expert in trusts nowadays. There's fewer and fewer of them, in fact. And many times if you go to your own attorney, she may not be as expert in the area of creating a trust. It may take her much longer and more research and would cost the donor much more. But as an advantage, the Episcopal Church Foundation, for free, can work with your donor and your donor's attorney to draft up the initial trust document so that we can provide a nearly perfected trust document for your donor and your donor's attorney to review. And then the Episcopal Church Foundation can serve as the trustee, as an entity, so that we'll be, as an entity, the trustee over the trust and its assets for the life of that trust. So this is a tremendous benefit and really eases the conscience of many people who are considering making this gift. It also, in fact, saves them a bit of money at the beginning because they don't have to pay for any of those legal services. They certainly will have to pay for their own attorney to do a review of that document when they finalize it. But it's a great advantage, and the Episcopal Church Foundation has an expert trust attorney on retainer to handle these. And so if this is something that one of your donors might be interested in, I would encourage them to contact us. We can set up a conference call to handle that. Now, there are a variety, an alphabet soup, if you will, of different types of charitable remainder trusts. However, they really fall into two main categories. And those two categories fall into these. The first being a fixed annuity trust, where it's known as a CRAT. Both of them, the CRAT and the CRUT, they have very happy-sounding acronyms. But the CRAT, or fixed annuity, pays out a fixed dollar amount from the trust asset year after year after year to the beneficiaries that are designated. The other kind is known as a unitrust or a CRUT. It's a variable trust, so it pays out a percentage, much like a good endowment, where it pays out a spending rule from the trust out of its assets. Now, many people would assume that the fixed annuity is more popular, when in fact that is not true. It is the unitrust or the variable trust, which pays out a percentage of the asset values every year, that is more popular, and that is because there's more of a risk of a trust exhausting when you have to pay out a fixed dollar amount, because these are not guaranteed income to the trust income beneficiaries. So there's more of a risk that the annuity trust could exhaust. But with a unitrust, that's less likely because you're putting out a percentage, and typically a percentage is chosen that will also allow the trust to grow over time. So it's typically a very beneficial thing to have in place, and one that very much helps a variety of individuals. This is a quick demonstration of a charitable gift annuity. Again, this is the charitable gift annuity, the most popular, most common form of a life income gift. As you can see, it's Miss Smith at age 75. And I should just tell you that it is not Jim Murphy or anyone on his staff who's sitting around the office coming up with these annuity rates. The annuity rates are assigned, and we adhere to them. They are assigned by the American Council for Gift Annuities, or the ACGA, which is typically what most charities throughout the country use for assigning annuity rates. The annuity rate is the algebraic equivalent that, based upon a number of factors, including mortality and expected asset growth, that will leave 50% of the original gift. And so for Miss Smith, and it's quite often Miss Smith, because as we know, women are typically more generous, and since New Testament times have been the source of support for the church. If you don't believe me, just read the New Testament. In this case, Miss Smith has a belief in the future mission and ministry of her parish, has given $100,000 in cash. She receives a very significant tax deduction for that. And she'll also receive a fixed annuity for the rest of her life of $5,800. Now, just given the nature of this gift, a large portion, as you can see, is tax-free to her. Now, it's tax-free up until the age of her life expectancy because this is a repayment of principal to Ms. Smith. And so this can be extremely advantageous, effectively giving a much higher payout than she's receiving in the absolute annuity rate term. However, it still leaves, on average, about 50% of the original value. Now, because the Episcopal Church Foundation is guaranteeing that Ms. Smith will receive that $5,800 regardless if this gift goes down to a zero value, she'll still receive that $5,800. But because of that guarantee, 10% of this remainder, or $5,000 out of that $50,000, would come back to the Episcopal Church Foundation to support its ongoing plan giving efforts for the entire Episcopal Church. Now, you can do two people, as I mentioned, with a charitable gift annuity. As you can see, though, when you have two life expectancies, all of the various rates are lower, including the tax deduction and the amount that's paid out. However, because of the nature of the algebra with the ACGA rate, it still leaves approximately 50% when both individuals have passed away. So either way, it's still created to leave 50%, and that is what we at the Episcopal Church Foundation test every year with State Street, who manages our life income gift assets. We do test that, and it does typically come out to right around 50%. So I want to pause to take a drink of water, also to answer a couple of questions that have come through. And I think the question that is up there, if a parish member calls the Episcopal and to help with the parish is a beneficiary, you try to have him give money to, oh, no. So, no, when we are speaking with someone who is interested in making a life income gift, it is purely up to them to decide what Episcopal entity they are choosing. The only restriction that they would have is for a charitable gift annuity, at least 10% has to come to us at the Episcopal Church Foundation. They're not required to leave the Episcopal Church Foundation anything for a pooled income fund. And you'll see this on the cheat sheet which you have for trusts, and this helps to offset the initial expenses that we incur legally up front. The Episcopal Church Foundation only requires 3% of the residual value of a trust to come to the Episcopal Church Foundation if the value is $500,000 or more. If it's under $500,000 at its origination, 5% of the ending value, not the original value, but the ending value would come back to ECF. Other than that, there is nothing that we would put forward to try and sway anyone. So if anyone calls us, we work with them to uncover what Episcopal charities they would like to give to. Okay. And let me see. Okay, yes, absolutely. There is a way to see the portion that you missed. Everything is being recorded tonight, and that is certainly still happening. I'm double checking, but everything has been recorded tonight. And that little blip that I had in the middle will get cut out. So I just want to note a couple of quick things about endowments. And the main thing with endowments that I want to note is that the vast majority of planned gifts will end up in an endowment. And that is appropriate, because if an endowment is being used appropriately, that means that you're only spending a small percentage, somewhere between 3 and 5%, of a conservative spending rule of an average value of your endowment over numerous quarters that you are measuring. And that means through doing so, you are not digging into the principle of that gift, and you are demonstrating to the members of your parish that you are appropriately using those endowment funds. And typically those endowment funds are held in perpetuity, and you are often using them not just for your operating income, but for numerous ministries that you can talk about that impact the lives of the people in the congregation and outside the congregation. And that is very appropriate, and that is very fitting for most people who make planned gifts, that is where they would want them designated. It is possible that some people would want planned gifts to go to other purposes. If your parish does make the choice to use a planned gift for something other than your endowment, although that is the norm, if you do that, it is very important that you talk to people very transparently about how you've used that gift, and you should only use it for things that are strategically important to the life and ministry and the future of the congregation. As we had mentioned earlier in tonight's webinar, these are future-focused gifts, and you need to demonstrate that you're just not using those planned gifts just to prop open the parish and keep the doors open. You need to show the impact, the difference, and the strategic use of those planned gifts. So some people may come up with reasons to use them for building capital assets, which serve the future mission and ministry of the congregation. But again, if you choose to use a planned gift for something other than putting in your endowment, talk about it, be transparent, be very clear that that figures into the overall strategic vision of your parish or Episcopal institution. Just a quick note, there are two types of endowment. One is called a true endowment, and that means it was designated by the donor to be an endowment. Quasi-endowments are what most parishes actually have, which are created by the power of the board of the Episcopal entity or the vestry. And if you receive an unrestricted gift, you are and create an endowment from that unrestricted gift, you are creating a quasi-endowment. The main difference is that a true endowment can never have its corpus invaded. You can spend that spending rule as appropriate, but you cannot invade the corpus of the endowment. You cannot spend high percentages over the long term. A quasi-endowment, a future vestry has the power, if there was an extreme situation such as the destruction of a building or something like that, the future vestry does have the power to invade the principle of a quasi-endowment. However, I want to be very clear, and we do endowment webinars all the time, ECF is not encouraging you to treat your true and quasi-endowments differently. We are encouraging you to treat them similarly, so you are using an appropriate conservative spending rule and not digging into the principle, because you want to demonstrate to your parishes that the leadership of the parish can be trusted with these endowments. There are many parishes, especially in the Northeast, which are digging deeper and deeper and deeper every year into their quasi-endowments so deeply that one day they will no longer have them anymore. And it'll be much harder to convince future donors that you can be trusted with future gifts if you were not able to take care of those previous gifts that you've been entrusted with. So please just do bear that in mind. Now, as I mentioned briefly before, if anyone on the call tonight is interested in getting copies of ECF's best practice endowment policies that have been used in hundreds of Episcopal parishes and dioceses and entities all across the country, we're more than happy to help you with that. And all you need to do is simply to send me an email, and we will share those with you electronically. So please just email me at the close of this webinar, or respond to the email that you're going to receive with the recording of this webinar, and just let us know. A couple of quick notes with respect to the endowment policy that will be shared with you with regard to planned giving. One I've already intimated, which is called the disposition of bequest policy. That applies to practically all planned gifts that you'll be receiving. And what it does is typically instruct that the vestry is going to accept gifts when they're a planned gift and typically place them in the endowment. And as I mentioned before, it will not ultimately restrict you that you cannot only put them in the endowment, but if you choose to, do it in a way that is transparent and clear, that you're using the planned gift for the purposes the donor would have intended, which is a future focus and for strategic needs. But generally, all planned gifts should go into the endowment, generally. Designated gift policy. Now, this is just a general guideline that all parishes will benefit from thinking about. There are hundreds and hundreds of tiny endowments that a parish has accepted all across the country for flowers on someone's anniversary of death or something like that. And that is because as soon as you accept a restricted gift, whether it be an endowed gift or not, must be used for the purposes that the donor intended, and you cannot vary from that. And so what we recommend is to set a threshold, a high enough threshold, and publicize that to the members of your parish or the constituents of your Episcopal entity, so that they know that you must give a high enough dollar amount before the fund can be restricted. And the purpose of this is quite practical for your treasurer and for your accountant, because any time you have a so-called sub-account, which is a designated fund that you must maintain separately in your books, though you invest all of these funds together in your endowment, you must account for those separate funds separately. You need to have it at a high enough threshold that you're not spending an inordinate amount of time and money taking care of a variety of very small funds that are very difficult to manage over the long term. So I'd just like to note that for every parish. I mentioned the spending rule already tonight. And just to let you know, as with a capital campaign, when it comes to endowment funds, it's strongly recommended that you do not have the members of your parish manage those funds directly. You should seek the help of an outside entity, whether that be a local bank or brokerage house or your diocesan investment trust. There are many, many dioceses that have wonderful, low-cost, and well-managed diocesan investment trusts. In fact, the Episcopal Church Foundation works with several dioceses already on investing those funds through our own endowment program. And you as a parish are invited to consider all of these options, whether they be a local opportunity, a diocesan investment trust, or us here at the Episcopal Church Foundation. It's a wonderful program. We're happy to chat with you about it. The main lesson here is you need to have, once again, an objective outsider that you can evaluate, and evaluate the performance of that outsider against appropriate benchmarks, and hopefully appropriate blended benchmarks based upon your asset allocation that you have chosen, so that you know whether or not the person you've appointed is performing well, because you may need to change that person based upon what you're receiving for the cost of that service. And hopefully you're receiving appropriate reports and statements to also evaluate people when doing so. Many institutions will charge high fees. The Episcopal Church Foundation charges very reasonable fees. And as I mentioned before, diocesan investment trusts are typically very low fees. So do be mindful of that. Be mindful of fees that are hidden within mutual funds, because quite often your total fees are much higher than you're imagining. The one quick note before I go on that I wanted to note with respect to endowments is reporting. And I encourage people to think about this, especially at their annual meeting. When you are reporting about your endowment, and certainly once you start receiving planned gifts over the long term, you will probably be creating endowment funds. You want to have in place endowment and gift acceptance policies now, and that's why it's good to contact us now, so that there is a clear structure in place, so that people will once again have that sense of trust and confidence to give you that gift, even if you don't have any endowment funds now. But over the long term, as you have endowment funds, I strongly recommend those who are in charge of overseeing those funds and reporting to the parish. When you report to the parish, don't just do that boring spreadsheet. You have to do that to account for your performance and how things are doing. but also incorporate stories of impact and the difference that your endowment is making. This is true of all of your budget. More and more today, as I mentioned earlier, you need to talk about the difference, the impact that you are making, and especially if you're starting to grow your endowment, you want to talk about the difference that your endowment is making. Share stories of the impact and the change it's having on people's lives, because that will help people to understand that they want to be a part of that and give you other gifts. Now, to go back to our pure planned giving conversation, your biggest obstacle in your growth of planned giving is a lack of awareness. And that will stop you. If you're not letting people know that they can make any of these different types of planned gifts that I've highlighted, every other charity in this country is trying to approach the folks in your pews to give them a planned gift. And unfortunately, because in the Episcopal Church we're so reticent when it comes to money, and especially when it comes to asking and raising awareness about planned giving, we do not raise awareness so that people know they can make these gifts. I had met a wonderful woman who had worked as a secretary to her congregation for many, many years and worked in her soup kitchen as well. And she did all that work as a volunteer. But no one ever mentioned planned giving, so that when her girls' school, that she had not been back to in 30 or 40 years, approached her about creating a wonderful charitable gift annuity, she created one, because why not? It's a great opportunity for her. But she was saddened when she realized she could have done exactly the same thing for her parish, for which she had a much deeper conviction. And so I share that story with you just to know that you should not just give up the place that you typically hold in people's hearts. People hold their parish very highly in their decisions, but if they don't know they can make one of these gifts and they're not asked, they may choose someone else. They may also choose someone else if you have not done enough work in building trust over time. And I've already talked about that at numerous times tonight. So please do not just give up your special place in the hearts of your donors to other charities, because they can really make a very significant gift. Okay, so a few starting points. I know a lot of the people who are just starting planned giving efforts at their parish may make a couple of initial mistakes, and I want to just point out things you should be careful about. And the first is only focusing on the most elderly members of your congregation. If you have members of your congregation that never had an allocation to you in their lifetime, and they're in their 80s and 90s, though you should raise awareness of all the different types of gifts they might consider, they will very likely not rewrite wills to include a planned gift to you so late in life, because they don't want their competency challenged. They have already made these decisions. And so it's not going to be the most elderly members of your congregation. It's also not going to be the richest members of the congregation, and that actually is quite a shock to many people, because folks associate wealth with planned gifts, and the reality is there is no statistical tracking between great wealth and planned gifts. And quite often, it's the unexpected person, the person who does not think of themselves as wealthy, or that is holding assets for whatever reason until much later in life, that will give those very substantial assets. It's typically, and I hate to say this, but it's typically someone like that elderly schoolmistress that we always have heard about, that no one realized was such a savvy investor, that held many, many assets and did not choose to give greatly during her lifetime. And then suddenly a tremendous gift is received. Now, if it's not those old, very elderly people and not the very wealthy, but more or less some of these unexpected people, all of those people that are going to be giving you a planned gift, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar, are your most committed people, your most dedicated people. And how do you uncover who those most dedicated people are? It's within their consistency of giving. It's the consistent givers that are your most likely planned givers, okay? So those are the people that are your most likely planned givers who've been giving year in and year out, week in and week out for you at the parish, who are going to be your most likely planned givers over the long term. Now, let me just say this, and this is in response to Sue's question, because it is true, you and most parishes do not have the ability to have paid employees, and I'm going to talk about how we can empower you at your parish in just a moment. But I want to share an important fact, and that is you do have some target ages for information raising. And those ages are between the ages of 40 to 60. And this has been proven by agencies like Stelter Research and the Lilly School for Philanthropy. The Lilly School, in fact, in one of their surveys a few years ago, found that individuals who are less affluent, Americans who are less affluent, are the most receptive to doing and acting on a planned gift between the ages of 50 to 60. And if you're more affluent, it's between the ages of 50 to 60. So it's that 40 to 60 age range that is your target education age. Those are the people you want to focus in on for raising awareness about all of these different types of gifts. Those are the people you want to try and draw into your adult forums about estate planning, because it's during that 40 to 60 age range that finally the kids have finally left the house, or hopefully they have, and individuals are finally considering with their spouse what they want to focus in on. What were the things that were most important to them in their hearts, and how they want to spend the rest of their lives, and make a testimony through their life and through the assets that they will leave through their estate planning. So it's that 40 to 60 age range that's going to be your target for education. And we have a tremendous number of resources at the Episcopal Church Foundation. As I had mentioned before, we're the main resource for planned giving for the entire Episcopal Church, and we've been very proud to have taken that over the past 20 years. And it's both in education and having those life income gift assets that we offer. There are a number of ways. This webinar is one, and I really commend you here for sitting with us. Those of you who are either listening to this on a recording or sticking with us throughout our 2-hour session tonight, you have a wonderful resource in something we provide called Funding Future Ministry. That's available through Forward Movement. It's a planned giving manual. You can purchase it in paper form for $15 or just recently available in ebook format on Amazon or with a Nook from Barnes & Noble. For only $9.99, you can get this planned giving manual, which is a wonderful resource going into much greater detail and stories of how parishes have been able to do planned giving work throughout the Episcopal Church. And I'd commend that resource to you without a doubt. As I mentioned before, ECF can share as many life income gift illustrations that a donor would desire to help them make a decision. However, I want to note a very special resource which is available as the life income gift illustrations are free. So is our planned giving sponsored website, which is on the screen, episcopalgifts.org. That is available to you to place on your own website. It is a super site, if you will, that allows any person, any donor who goes in looking for information on planned gifts, they can learn about any type of planned gift. They can also uncover a variety of tax information, and they can run their own simplified life income gift illustrations. And for the more complex illustration, it will direct them back to ECF, and we can help them with that. So if you have a stewardship section of your website but don't have one for planned giving yet, this is a resource directly for you. So you can just create a sub-page of your stewardship website about planned giving, put a few notes about planned giving, and then say, see this website for more information. And it will contain tremendous resources for the members of your parish. Now, there's a new resource that the Episcopal Church Foundation is very proud to put out. Excuse my water there. It is an hour and a half in. And it's called Planned Giving on Demand. What we have noticed over the years that we've been responsible for collecting all of these different resources for planned giving is that people needed to learn at their own pace, and that many times I felt everything that ECF offered was almost too overwhelming. And they needed a clear guide to do this. And so what we have done is we have centralized all of our resources in paper and electronic form into one website. And individual parishes can purchase a copy of Planned Giving on Demand, our new toolkit, which encompasses all of this, through Forward Movement or through our own website on episcopalfoundation.org. And through this website, you can purchase this resource for very inexpensive $29.95. It will be going up in price soon, but for those of you listening in the early part of 2015, it is $29.95, $29.95 to be clear. And in this, everything is centralized. And what is very advantageous is that you have both not only funding future ministry, but you also have this program guide, which I'm showing you on the screen right now in paper form. You also have this program guide in electronic form online, so that you are able to actually view, as you're viewing now, all of our resources hyperlinked in our program guide. So as you go through the different levels of just starting at the most basic point for planned giving, and it tells you to look at this webinar, look at this article, or download this booklet or brochure, all you need to do is just click on it, and you will go directly to that resource. This is a quick view of how the page looks. But what I wanted to highlight to everyone, and this addresses an earlier question about how are we able to help your leadership. We're able to help them through all of these resources, but especially through this. Because what we have uncovered, that you need to appoint someone that we call the Planned Giving Shepherd. The Planned Giving Shepherd at your congregation or at your Episcopal institution is the person or persons, you can certainly appoint more than one, who will be responsible for taking on the mantle of learning about planned giving and listening to the webinars, listening to a webinar like this tonight or any of the other webinars that are offered, and empowering themselves to become more capable leaders so that they are raising awareness of planned giving for everyone else in the congregation. This planned giving shepherd should not be your rector, your church warden, your treasurer. It should be someone who has time to devote to learning about planned giving, and it should always be a lay person. As with most stewardship efforts, it is best if it is lay-led, and this is no exception with planned giving. So this shepherd or your couple or three of your planned giving shepherds at your congregation will get a hold of all the various resources at ECF, educate themselves, and invite others into the conversation to understand planned giving more so that they can move on from the most simple stages of simply raising awareness of the different types of planned giving, of sharing booklets and brochures, which I'll mention all this in a moment, but that they can actually have a plan for how they will implement your planned giving efforts at your congregation. And in fact, everyone who becomes a planned giving shepherd through Planned Giving on Demand will actually be invited to a variety of new webinars that will empower that group of individuals directly. You can always access all of our resources for free, but with Planned Giving on Demand, everything is centralized. So it's just yet again another resource that's available for you. So I know a lot of you are probably struggling at this point, but this is certainly a recorded webinar, so in the future you can pull it up on your PC or a Mac and play it back. But before we get into the final stages of implementing, and I'm going to go through those quickly because those are much clearer when you're using Plan Giving on Demand, I just want to encourage everyone who's on the webinar that if you are choosing to move ahead with a planned giving ministry at your congregation, that you are playing for keeps. You are not just going to get all excited about planned giving now and then just let it flounder, because that is a terrible thing to do, both from a relationship development perspective and also just from what you're communicating to the members of your parish. If you are going to have a planned giving effort, you need to be committed to it, to do something about planned giving on an ongoing basis to keep the relationship sustained. The best way to do that over the long term, of course, will be to create a legacy society, and the Episcopal Church Foundation has webinars about sustaining a legacy society, and I will address a couple of those things in a moment. But for you at this point, if you're committed to creating a planned giving ministry, you need to commit to keeping people informed over the long term. And you need to be committed to keeping track of when people inquire, and especially when they notify you that you've been raised to the level of family in their estate plans. You need to keep saying thank you to those individuals. And you need to thank them as soon as they have notified you. The best way, quite honestly, for a parish to thank someone immediately after they've been notified is for the rector to write a handwritten thank you note. People rarely get handwritten thank you notes anymore, and they are very treasured by those who are receiving them. So that would be something that you must commit to. Now, let me just say one quick thing, because I know some people may be dropping off of the webinar and not listening to the remainder. If you have not already placed on your annual pledge card the following note, I strongly recommend you put this note, and that is, please check off here if you have remembered the parish in your estate plan. This is the building block of your planned giving effort. And when people check that box off, they are communicating to you a tremendous conviction for your future mission and ministry. Those people who have checked it off may well be good shepherds or future shepherds. Even if they're not your planned giving shepherd in the future, they will certainly be someone who could be involved in your planned giving effort. They could be a human resource, people who could give a testimony either in written or oral form to talk about why they've made this important decision, and it will encourage others, without a doubt, if they are able to give that testimony either on your website, through a video, through having a short session at your annual meeting, or through a written note on your website or through some other newsletter that you might put out. A second line I strongly recommend for you also to put on your pledge card is as follows. Please check off here if you would want more information about planned giving opportunities. And have no fear. If someone does check off that second line and you have nothing going on in planned giving, have no fear. Just send them a very nice thank you note, and you can even use a booklet or brochure that the Episcopal Church Foundation makes available through free download, or you can order several of them to simply give them, and they can right away start learning more about planned giving. Of course, if you are feeling a little panicked, you can certainly get a copy of Planned Giving on Demand or contact us directly at the Episcopal Church Foundation, and we are more than happy to share all of our resources with you. So I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of one of the brochures. But I wanted now to just transition into highlighting a few quick pointers as you're beginning your efforts at your congregation. As I mentioned before, one of the most important ones, quite honestly, is to appoint a plan giving shepherd, someone who is more of a type A personality like myself, who can make sure that they are planning in advance and beginning to plan all of your plan giving efforts, and beginning to teach themselves about plan giving, and beginning to raise awareness throughout the leadership of your congregation and to the members of the congregation. One of the easiest ways to get quickly started on this, after you've appointed your plan giving shepherd, and whether or not you buy plan giving on demand, it doesn't matter, just have someone who's focused in on plan giving is a key factor. That individual can get booklets and brochures from the Episcopal Church Foundation, from our website. It's all available for them at any time. As you begin to develop your plan giving efforts at your congregation, you will likely want to become more proactive. And the next step in that effort is to put in place endowment and gift acceptance policies. I actually recommend that you do it immediately. It can run concurrently with just the very beginning of your plan giving effort. And tonight can be the night that you start this by contacting us at ECF for endowment and gift acceptance policies, which we're happy to share with you. But in addition to that, as you become more proactive and you make those endowment and gift acceptance policies more clear to the members of your congregation, you are building up trust, a sense of confidence that the leadership can be trusted with these very long-term gifts that people will be making. You can even begin to have your plan giving shepherds seek out some more of these testimonial givers, people who would be willing to, as I say, write an article about why they chose to make a plan gift, or at your next large public gathering for them to be able to talk about it in front of others. Again, as you proceed on your plan giving effort, and this is made very clear in all of the plan giving on demand materials, that you begin to raise awareness on an ongoing basis, that you could even make use of the various webinars that the Episcopal Church Foundation makes available for free, and you could even play them within the context of an adult forum. You could consider having a testimonial at your next annual meeting where you would have your plan giving shepherd help select someone who is very well respected within the congregation, who could stand up in front of your annual meeting and just take a couple of moments to explain why they've chosen to raise the parish to the level of family in their estate plans. I can tell you with absolute certainty they will not talk about the tax benefits. Have no fear. They will talk about the life-changing ministry and the life-changing experiences they've had in your congregation or with your Episcopal entity, and why they've made this important decision. Now, if you do that, I will give you the practical advice. I will give you this practical advice. Your plan giving shepherd should be standing off to the side and ready and willing with a blank sheet of paper, because the next thing that I would recommend that person giving the testimonial to do would be to then ask everyone at that annual meeting or large gathering if they also have already made this planned gift to the parish in their estate plan. They can stand up and be applauded. Those people who stand up are self-identifying themselves that they are also interested in learning more about plan giving, and the plan giving shepherd can certainly make record of who those individuals are and be able to send them a thank you note and have the rector send them a personal thank you note and ask them if they want any other information about plan giving or about any other information. They can certainly do that. Over the longer term, and again, this is elaborated in our plan giving materials, over the longer term, it is more effective for you to plan out about a year in advance. And it is most effective to do that once you have a plan giving committee. Plan giving committee working with your plan giving shepherd in planning something like an estate planning adult forum or a planning for the end-of-life opportunity. I had brought up a example before, which is also a part of the Plan Giving on Demand packet, called Planning for the End of Life. And it is a manual for planning for the end of life that can be downloaded from the Episcopal Church Foundation website for free and can be shared at whatever adult forum you think would be appropriate. That allows people to go through on their own, and they can record not only various items about their estate planning before they go to an attorney, it also gives them the opportunity to begin planning their own funeral. And believe it or not, there are a heck of a lot of Episcopalians who really want very specific wishes. And this is a part of your plan giving ministry to help people to fulfill those wishes. And this is certainly one way to do it, through using that resource and having an adult forum to do that. You can, and that's also something very easy for your rector or associate priest to do in an adult forum setting to help people to have their funeral planned using this resource. And let me just say, you should all know by now that many times people do not stay in the denomination that they were brought up in. So it's very possible that when mom's funeral comes along, it'll be very beneficial to have documentation that she's filled out specifying her funeral wishes, because she could have her Wiccan daughter and her Presbyterian son suggesting a very different funeral than she might have wanted. But if she has this all in place and registered with the parish, it's a great opportunity. Also, you could have an adult forum that would enable you to talk about health proxies and living wills. And I can't more strongly suggest that anyone, no matter what their age or circumstance, put in place a living will and appoint a health proxy. And then, once they have that in place and have done the various state requirements for it, use our resources or use other resources that help specify how do you wish to be cared for if you were medically incapacitated. Very, very important for everyone to have these sorts of documents in place. And this can be an important part of your plan giving ministry. And your plan giving committee can help plan this. You can have people join the committee who are professionals in this area, who are attorneys, who are financial planners, who are people who like to plan events generally, but also people who can talk about all of these topics. And even if they are not the plan giving shepherd, they can be involved in what gets planned by the plan giving committee. And also the Episcopal Church Foundation is happy to help you in all of these efforts. The longest term, and I realize a lot of you are at the very early stages, so you can certainly play back these webinars in the future and use our resources to help plan this out. Your longest term effort is to put in place a legacy society. And as I say, ECF has pre-webinars that you can play back about a legacy society, but every time you bring up a legacy society, you are automatically raising awareness about plan giving. Because if you are setting up a legacy society with best practices, you are setting it up so that this is a society at your parish which is totally inclusive. It includes everyone who has notified the parish that they have remembered the parish with a planned gift, regardless of any type of planned gift. And you are I'm imploring you to make sure you are not asking for a copy of the will, nor asking for a dollar amount that someone is making as a planned gift. What you are trying to do over the long term is build a sense of collaboration and relationship with the individuals who want to raise you to the level of family in their estate plans. And for that reason, you want to start out with a trusting relationship. You do not want to require documentation be provided to you. Because in fact, if you required a copy of the will to be given to you, the very next day someone could change their will, because that is the great opportunity with estate planning. You can change who you have designated, and that's always up to someone to do if they wish. There is one exception about requiring documentation, and I'll just note it now. If you, over time, find out that someone has included you with an insurance policy, that is the one exception. Currently, at this time, in March of 2015, most states do not require that insurance companies seek out all their beneficiaries. So although many insurance companies will seek out their beneficiaries, they're not legally required to in most states. And so if you uncover that an individual has given you a planned gift through making you the remainder beneficiary of an insurance policy, that is a time when you should inquire with a very nice letter thanking them for this, but also asking them to provide for you evidence that you are the beneficiary, because you do need to provide that to an insurance company sometimes to receive the final payout of the insurance policy. So that's enough about that. Back to the Legacy Society and its importance. It gives you an opportunity to say thank you while people are alive, to raise up their witness to other members of the congregation. And it's actually, in many ways, an engine for planned giving itself, because, as I said before, every time you mention or talk about the Legacy Society, it automatically raises awareness about planned giving to everyone at the congregation, because everyone who is a member automatically is asked to be a member once they have notified the parish that they have made this important decision. A couple of starting points. I know that you can learn much more about this in other webinars and through other materials, but a quick note is, once you are thinking about planned giving, you can right now, this evening, think about two things. You can think about who is going to be your planned giving shepherd. You can also think about a future date, maybe 2 years down the road, for having an inaugural date for your planned giving society. Why 2 years down the road? Well, if you've been listening from the beginning, that is because it takes time for people to make a decision about a planned gift. And if you are notifying people that in 2 years you're going to have an inaugural event, that gives people a sufficient amount of time and space to reflect on what appropriate gift it is for them. And you can also have 12 months to 2 years of having events such as the various adult films I mentioned, such as events at an annual meeting, or other opportunities where you are notifying people, and certainly your priest can let people know from the pulpit the importance of planned giving and planning ahead, and invite them to look at various materials that you might have developed at the back of the narthex that most people have. That in your tract rack you can have either Episcopal Church Foundation materials or ones you've developed imitating those materials. So that's all available for people to do during this inaugurating period. To pick that date in the future, think about if there is an anniversary date in the future. That would be the optimal date to pick, because you have the opportunity then to combine talking about the wonderful history of the parish along with its wonderful ministries in the present and everything that you're planning in the future. And that inaugural event can tie right in. If you don't have one of those special anniversaries coming up, simply pick a date to do your inauguration. And during that time period, let people know that anyone who notifies the parish during that time can become a founding member of the Legacy Society. It can really just push people that much sooner. And again, the main purpose of the Legacy Society is to celebrate, to say thank you, and to hold up their witness. It can actually be a lot of fun creating a Legacy Society and coming up with the names and coming up with pins and things you might give to people to wear at special times during the year, so that when they wear that pin that signifies the Legacy Society, someone who doesn't know what it is can come up to them and say, well, gosh, what is that pin for? And that person can then give their own personal testimony for why they've made this choice to join the Legacy Society. But one very, very important thing, and this is, again, for your future planning when it comes to having a Legacy Society in the future. After that inaugural date, after that date, every year, year after year after year, you need to have at least one thank you event. You can have more events. You could have fun events that celebrate the Legacy Society all throughout the year. Informational ones talking about the new ministries that you're doing. You could invite the Legacy Society to a special concert or a final rehearsal if your choir is having a special concert. Any idea that evokes the passion and conviction that they have for your work in ministry, those are all great opportunities. But at least once a year, you need to say thank you to the members of the Legacy Society. And the best way to do this, quite honestly, is after you've had that inaugural event or you've planned that inaugural event and it's coming up, you should look at your calendar for your parish for the next year and pick the next date that you're going to have your thank you event for the Legacy Society. And then every year thereafter, as that date is approaching, or you are in the midst of planning your next year's calendar, whatever is appropriate for you as a parish, that's when you set the date. You're setting it far enough in advance so that you and the leadership of the congregation is accountable to that date. Honestly, it really makes a difference, because once you have it on the calendar, whether or not you have as lavish an event as you did the very first one, or you simply have a potluck supper, or as we do in Manhattan, cocktail hour, or whatever you might desire, just one simple event saying thank you every year, each year thereafter. You can do more extravagant events if you wish. That is perfectly fine, but you must say thank you at least once a year, because what you're trying to establish is the long-term relationship with the members of your Legacy Society. As I mentioned before, the members of your Legacy Society are your most committed members. They are interested in what you're doing, what's new, and what's planned for the future. So share all of this information with them. Update them as best you can, because they are committed to your work in ministry. I want to note that, again, that the Episcopal Church Foundation has all of our webinars, including this one, if you're listening to it right now, on recording on our ecfvp.org website, our Vital Practices website. So anytime, day or night, you can listen to any of our webinars. I will note one of them to you, and it is noted throughout all of our Plan Giving materials if you get a hold of Plan Giving on Demand, and that is the Prospective Donor webinar. You can also access it directly through ecfvp.org. It is a 35-minute webinar that only focuses on the different types of Plan Giving, and it's intended just for donors. So you could actually give this over to an individual who has approached you, who's interested about Plan Giving, and they can learn in a short 35 minutes all of the different types. You can also use it within the context of an adult forum. If you don't want to pay for Jim Murphy or someone else to come to your parish or diocese, within the context of an adult forum, you could simply schedule a time to have one or two people stand up and, again, give their testimony, because that's so impactful for why they've made the choice to make a planned gift, and then just if you're connected to the internet and have a projector, play the prospective donor webinar. It's short, and it is a very low-cost way to immediately raise awareness. And again, your biggest obstacle is a lack of awareness. So just to wrap up for the night, there's a number of wonderful webinars coming up, which I have posted on the screen. They're all free, and of course will all be recorded so you can see them for future reference. The Episcopal Church Foundation has staff to help you as you move ahead with your planned giving efforts, and all of us are available to assist you in these efforts. And as I look at this picture, yes, it does look like I have a bit more gray in my beard, so perhaps it might be time to update these pictures. But regardless, we've talked about a tremendous amount of information tonight, and I commend you all who have stayed through the full 2 hours. But regardless of all of the technical details of everything that we've shared and all of the planning that you're doing, the thing that is most important is to remember that the work you're doing in planned giving is a ministry. And you are raising awareness of all the different types of planned gifts so that people can reflect for themselves about how they wish to have their wishes fulfilled. And one of those most important wishes, quite honestly, for many people, is to raise their parish or other Episcopal charities to the level of family in their estate plans. And I just commend you for raising awareness to them in this way. And always remember, at the heart, it is this emotional desire to raise your parish or Episcopal institution to the level of family. That really matters. Always remember that, because everything goes back to that principle. So thank you all for joining me tonight. I'm going to take the couple of questions that have come up. If you have questions, you're certainly welcome to type them in now or contact me later. Again, if you need those endowment and gift acceptance policies that are so important for building trust and sustaining awareness, send me an email, and all of you will receive all of the slideshows, a copy of the webinar, and again, another copy of these materials that have been sent. So if you had any problems with the webinar, you can, as several people have messaged me here, you can listen to the recording. And should the vestry have approved the enabling resolution before launching, it is best if you start putting those into place right away. However, you can start raising awareness of planned giving immediately. Immediately. Having those endowment and gift acceptance policies in place and made public is an essential component, but they can run parallel to what you're doing. It may take a couple of months for your vestry to pass those resolutions, and that's okay. And then you may take another few weeks after that before making them public and putting them on your website or however you wish to make them public. But you can do them in tandem. It really does work hand in hand. And since it does take people so long, quite honestly, to make a planned gift and those decisions, they work hand in hand, and it will work together timing-wise well. Well, actually, Sue, Stephen, I'm so happy you said what you said, because that's actually what I love to recommend to people, that when you have a Legacy Society event, I feel, and I just had a discussion with a very large church down south about this afternoon, that I strongly recommend that you allow the members of the Legacy Society to invite their own guest from the parish who they think would be a great new member of a Legacy Society to the next event that they have. It allows them not only to give their own personal testimony, but allows your numbers to be increased by people who are, shall we say, pre-qualified to join in. So it's a great, great opportunity. So that really wraps it up for this evening. This should be about a 2-hour webinar after the glitch in the middle is sorted out. So thank you all for coming. This is work that all of us at the Episcopal Church Foundation have been devoted to for 2 decades. And I am privileged to oversee of all of these financial resources programs. And thank you all for coming tonight. If there's anything more that the Episcopal Church Foundation can do to support your leadership and financial resource development, please just contact us. We are more than happy to help us. We'll be making sure that you all have access to vital practices if you don't already. So thank you all for coming tonight. It's been fun for me. And now it's dinner time. So have a great night.